A sparkling collection of videos from award-winning children's animator Michael Sporn are waiting for you on the Family Home Entertainment label.
It's wonderful, Mom.
First, from Bernard Waber, author of Lyle, Lyle, Crocodile, another best-loved book comes to video.
Ira, what are you doing here?
Ira sleeps over. Then, a literary treasure comes alive, set to wonderful music.
You can still read your books and dream, but you have to give real life some attention as well.
It's Robert Louis Stevenson's A Child's Garden of Verses.
Please play some more. It was so beautiful.
Told to the tunes of jazz great Fats Waller comes Jazz Time Tale.
Look, it's a red shoes, just like the ones I saw.
And a classic story becomes a modern-day favorite, The Red Shoes.
Shall I dance for you? Oh, yes.
There's more sweet enchantment with the Marzipan Pig, along with the wonderful, whimsical fun of Nonsense and Lullabies, poems for children, and Nonsense and Lullabies, nursery rhymes. Plus, overnight, he leapt to fame and fortune.
The frogs don't really dance, do they?
The story of the dancing frog. Watch for all of the musical, magical delights from award-winning animator Michael Sporn on video cassette from Family Home Entertainment.
Deep in a forest, there lived a woodcutter and his wife. After a day of chopping trees and hauling logs, the woodcutter would go home to their cottage. And after supper, his wife would come to him and say, "Wouldn't it be nice if we had a child?" The woodcutter would grunt, because he was tired from cutting wood. And in the morning, after breakfast, his wife would come to him and say, "I wouldn't mind if we only had one child." The woodcutter would grunt, because he had only just got out of bed. Sometimes, if he was working close by, the woodcutter would go home at midday, and his wife would come to him after lunch and say, "It's so quiet when I'm all alone here during the day. I would like to have a child to keep me company." The woodcutter would snort, because he was very hungry from hauling logs. Then, finally, she would take a shawl and go out into the forest where the woodcutter was working. What fun it would be to have a child who could help you with your chopping. And the woodcutter would stop his work and scratch his head and think for a moment and say, now you mention it, that's not a bad idea. But a newborn child would be too small to help me to chop wood or to keep you company." "I don't mind," the woodcutter's wife would say. "I don't mind if the child is no bigger than my thumb." At this, the woodcutter would roar with laughter. "As big as your thumb? That's good!" And he would go on with his chopping. But sometime later, the woodcutter and his wife did have a child, a small son. In fact, he was extremely small. He was actually no bigger than a human thumb. And so the couple called him Tom Thumb. His mother started by feeding him on porridge, but he still didn't grow any bigger. Then she gave him steaks, pork chops, baked beans, blueberry tarts, puddings, and stewed apples. But the woodcutter and his wife soon realized that Tom Thumb would always be very, very small. So he stayed at home all day and talked to his mother, and the woodcutter worked out in the forest on his own. And each evening he went home and looked at his little son and said to his wife, "Tom Thumb stays at home all day and keeps you company, but he's too small to help me in the forest." But his wife looked up and said, "He's very clever. I'm sure there's something he could do." "Like what?" grunted the woodcutter. "He could drive the horse and cart," said his wife. "Oh, yes," said the woodcutter gruffly. "And how will he do that?" "Well, he gets on very well with animals. I'm sure he'll find a way," said his wife. "Ha, ha, ha," grunted the woodcutter. "The horse would step on him and not even notice." Then they heard Tom's small voice. "I can do it," cried Tom. "I can drive the horse and cart. Just lift me up to the horse's ear. I can then whisper directions to him. I'll be perfectly safe up there." The woodcutter's wife was worried. The woodcutter was doubtful. But Tom Thumb was very confident indeed. So his father lifted him up to the horse's ear. "Hello, horse," whispered Tom Thumb into the animal's hairy ear. "Hello," said the horse. "Who are you?" "I'm Tom Thumb," said Tom Thumb. "Oh," said the horse, who was becoming rather confused. "I can't see you," he said. "That's because I'm in your hairy ear," said Tom. "Very well," said the horse, and he moved off. Tom spoke quietly to the horse, telling him which way to turn, when to stop, and when to go. Soon they reached the part of the wood where the woodcutter was felling trees. The woodcutter loaded the cart with logs, and Tom whispered into the horse's ear, "Come on, we're going home now." "Very well," mumbled the horse, and they turned around and trundled home. And after a day of chopping trees and hauling logs, the woodcutter went home too. When they had finished their supper, his wife came to him and said, "How did Tom get on today?" "He did well," grunted the woodcutter. "He carried 3 loads of logs. I can usually only carry 1. "There you are," said his wife. "Now you can see what a clever son you have." Snorted the woodcutter, because he was tired from cutting wood. The next day, Tom worked with his father in the wood. The woodcutter chopped up the logs and loaded them onto the cart. And Tom whispered to the horse, "Come on." And the horse said, "Very well," and trundled home. Now, although the woodcutter worked very hard, he and his wife were very poor, and little Tom had a large appetite. When Tom saw how worried his mother was, he decided that the moment he had an opportunity, he would do his best to help. As Tom was guiding the horse through the wood, he passed 2 men sitting by the side of the road. They watched as the horse found his way through the woodland paths.
"How's he doing that?"
said one of the men. "How's who doing what?" said the other.
"How's that horse finding his way through the wood without anyone telling him where to go?"
"Meaning?" said the other.
"Meaning, dummy, how's the horse, without anyone telling him, finding his own way?"
"Through the wood?" said the other. And they looked at each other and said, "Don't know." So they followed the horse and cart. Tom Thumb was so small they could not see him by the horse's ear. And when Tom whispered, "Go faster," the horse mumbled, "Okie dokie." And when Tom whispered, "Go slower," the horse muttered, "All right then." And when they went over a narrow bridge, Tom whispered, "Steady, boy." And the horse grunted, "All righty." The 2 men, following a short way behind, became more and more confused.
"What do you think?"
said one of the men. "About what?" said the other.
"About the horse."
"What about the horse?" said the other.
"How does he know when to go faster and when to go slower?"
"Meaning?" said the other.
"Meaning, Dodo, when he has to go faster or slower, how...
Does he know? Said the other. And they looked at each other and said, "Dunno." So they followed the horse and cart until they reached the spot where the woodcutter was working. There they hid behind a tree and watched. The woodcutter lifted Tom from the horse's ear and said, "Well done, young Tom. We can go home for our supper now."
Did you see that?
Whispered one of the men. "Say what?" said the other.
There was a little fellow sitting in the horse's ear.
"There was?" said the other.
Yes, that's who was telling the horse what to do.
"It was?" said the other.
Yes. That gives me an idea.
"It does," said the other.
Yes. We could put a little fellow like that on show. Think of it, the smallest man on earth. We'd make a fortune.
"We would?" said the other.
Course we would. We'd be rich. And a little tyke like that wouldn't eat much, so he wouldn't cost much to keep.
"Oh, yeah," said the other.
We'll go all over the country. We'll go abroad. We'll buy a huge castle and never have to work ever again.
"Why not?" said the other.
'Cause, Dumbo, that little pipsqueak will do all the work for us.
"Oh, yeah," said the other.
But we'll have to give the woodcutter some money. How much you got?
$10, said the other.
Yeah, that should be enough. Hand it over.
"But it's my life savings," said the other.
This could be our big break. Come on, slip it across.
And as the woodcutter was talking to Tom, the two men stepped forward.
That's a clever little guy, that is,
said the first man. "Yeah," said the other. "It's my son," said the woodcutter.
Yeah, well, we'd like to buy him, see?
"Right," said the other. The woodcutter was angry at this suggestion. "Sell you my own son? How dare you suggest such a thing? Get out of here!"
No, don't be so hasty. We'll treat him well, said the man, turning to the other. Won't we?
"Yeah," said the other. "Just as though he was our own son."
That's right, said the man. Just as though he was our very own little son. So what do you say, huh?
And he held up the bag of money. "Look," said the woodcutter, becoming even more angry. "I told you to get out, or I'll knock you down like a couple of trees." But Tom whispered to his father,
Please accept her offer. We need the money. Don't worry about me. I'll get away from them and come straight home.
The woodcutter scratched his head. He was very unhappy at the idea of letting his son go with the two strangers.
$10, said the first man. Can't say fairer than that.
"Nope, we can't," said the other.
I'll be fine.
Whispered Tom. So the woodcutter took the bag of coins and watched as his little son went off with the two men. When the woodcutter told his wife what he had done, she was furious. She threw the supper on the floor and went to bed in tears. The two men walked and walked until it began to grow dark.
Look here, Shorty,
The first man said to Tom.
we're gonna rest here for the night. Tomorrow we'll take you into town, and you can start earning us some money.
"Yeah, lots of dough," said the other. But when the two men had fallen asleep, Tom got up and slipped away. The first man stirred and saw Tom.
Hey, he shouted. Come back, you little pipsqueak.
But Tom quickly disappeared down a rabbit hole and was gone. He ran through the woods and he ran through the fields. But he had traveled so far with the two men that he had to stop in order to rest. He found a dry nest under a hedge and fell asleep. As soon as he had dozed off, two knobbly hands suddenly grabbed him. It was a well-known robber, thief, and burglar who had spotted Tom in the undergrowth.
You and I are going to be partners, he said, and he stuffed Tom into his pocket and went on his way. But Tom didn't mind. He knew that all the time he was getting nearer and nearer to his parents' cottage again. Soon they were approaching a small village. They reached the parson's house, and the thief crept around to the back door. All right, my pint-sized friend, whispered the thief. This is what I want you to do. I'm going to put you up to that small window. You're little enough to climb through the bars. Get it?
And what do I do when I'm inside?
Asked Tom. The thief burst into uncontrolled laughter.
What? What does he do when he gets inside? The little shrimp inquires. Well, what do you think you do? He asked.
I don't know,
Said Tom.
Well, I'll tell you, you little runt, said the thief. What you do is creep into the parson's living room, grab all his silver, and hand it down to me. That is what I want you to do.
How will I get the silver up to the window?
Asked Tom. Look, shouted the thief. Then he lowered his voice again so that he would not wake the household. Look, just get on with it. It'll be getting light soon. And he lifted Tom onto the windowsill. Now, whispered the thief, you know what to do, so get on with it. And Tom shouted back in his loudest voice,
What would you like me to hand down first?
Shh, whispered the thief anxiously. You'll wake up the household.
What did you say?
Shh, whispered the thief, and he began to jump up and down in a fury. Stop wasting time! Just hand me any silver you can find, cried the thief, trying to keep his voice down. But hurry!
All right,
shouted Tom,
I'm going.
and he slipped through the bars of the window and jumped down into the scullery. It was very dark inside. He crashed into a pail. Then he stumbled into the broom cupboard and landed in a stack of jam jars. The parson's cook, who was asleep in the next room, awoke with a start.
What?
She cried. Afraid that she could hear mice, she took up a rolling pin and tiptoed into the scullery. The thief was jumping up and down with rage.
Come out here, you horrid mice.
The cook screamed.
Come out at once.
The thief heard the cook screaming and ran off and wasn't seen again in the village for many years. The cook searched in every corner, under the table and the cupboards, but Tom was hiding behind the coal scuttle. Hearing all the clatter, the parson came down in his nightshirt. My good woman, what hath been transpiring? He asked. Oh, Reverend, simpered the cook, I heard mice in the scullery. Now, now, said the parson, let us not immediately suppose that all the sounds of the night may be attributed to the activities of one of God's less noble creatures.
But I heard them, Reverend,
whined the cook.
with my own ears.
Now, now, said the parson, my good woman, I beg you to put down that instrument of violence and return to your slumber.
But, Reverend, they're in here, honest.
Sometimes in the dead of night it is not unusual, indeed it is relatively frequent, that we find ourselves imagining all kinds of phenomena which, when daylight returns and trickles through our curtains, we realize how foolish we have been. Listen, sweetie, said the cook, quite forgetting herself, if you're not going to do anything, I am. The parson coughed. I think I may have a solution.
Oh, yes, said the cook. What's that?
If one were to open the kitchen door and leave it ajar, any vermin here present would be free to escape. So the cook opened the door and crept back to bed. And the parson, unable to get back to sleep, went to his study to write a sermon. When all was quiet, Tom Thumb tiptoed out from behind the coal scuttle and left through the open door. It was still dark outside, so Tom went into a shed where the parson kept his cow.
Hello.
said Tom.
Hello,
Said the cow in a sleepy voice.
it's rather late for visitors.
I'm very sorry,
Said Tom.
but I have nowhere to spend the night.
Oh, well, you're very welcome to stay here if you wish.
Said the cow, looking around and wondering where the voice was coming from.
Thank you.
Said Tom, and settled himself in the soft hay. In the morning, the parson came to the shed. He was taking the cow to market.
Can I ride with you?
Whispered Tom to the cow.
I'm still a long way from home.
Oh, yes, of course.
Said the cow. So Tom climbed up and sat behind the cow's ear as the parson led her towards the village. As they passed near the forest, Tom whispered in the cow's ear,
My mother and father live in the middle of the wood. I'll walk from here. Thank you for your help.
Look out for wolves.
said the cow.
It isn't safe to be alone in the forest.
Tom jumped down, waved to the cow, and disappeared into the trees. After he had gone a fair way, Tom began to feel very tired. This part of the forest was unfamiliar to him, and he was afraid he would get lost once it grew dark. So Tom sat down to rest. Suddenly, he heard the cry of a wolf not far away. Then 2 big eyes appeared in the shadows of the trees. Tom was frightened. He could hear the sound of some enormous creature sniffing, snorting, and licking his lips. Tom was about to run and hide, but it was too late. A huge wolf bounded out of the shadows and gobbled up poor Tom.
Let me out!
Cried Tom from deep inside the wolf's tummy. No, said the wolf stubbornly, I won't,
But I'm hardly a mouthful.
shouted Tom.
I know where you can get plenty of good food to eat.
Not interested, said the wolf,
It's freshly cooked, as much as you can eat.
shouted Tom. Oh, yeah? Where from? said the wolf,
A short walk from here,
shouted Tom.
in the center of the woods.
So Tom guided the wolf through the forest to the woodcutter's cottage.
You can climb between the bars of the kitchen window.
Said Tom from the wolf's stomach.
There's plenty of chicken, smoked ham, beef, and sausages inside.
The thought of all this meat made the wolf's mouth water uncontrollably. He immediately jumped up and squeezed through the bars. There in the kitchen was all the food that Tom had described. The wolf's eyes bulged and his mouth dribbled, and he began to eat. And he ate, and he ate, and he ate. And he grew fatter and fatter. He'd never seen so much food in his life. He continued to eat until he couldn't eat any more. In fact, he couldn't hardly move, he was so fat. Meanwhile, Tom had been singing and dancing in the wolf's stomach. He created such a noise that the woodcutter and his wife woke up.
Uh-oh, said the wolf. Time for me to leave.
And he hiccuped. Unfortunately, the wolf had become so fat he couldn't fit between the bars of the window.
Looks like I'm in a bit of a fix,
said the wolf. The woodcutter rushed in and hit the wolf on the head with a log. He fell to the floor, and Tom crawled out of his mouth unhurt. His mother hugged and kissed him with delight at his safe return. And she forgave the woodcutter for selling her tiny son. After all, they'd been able to buy a lot of things with the $10. The wolf waddled off, feeling rather sick and suffering from a terrible headache. And after they had all had breakfast, the woodcutter's wife came and said, Aren't we the luckiest people in the world? Grunted the woodcutter. He was tired from his fight with the wolf. Bye.